Nope. Alright.
Hey guys, it's me, Walt. This part's gonna be a little unscripted. I just kind of gotta get like what's on my mind, what's in my head out here. So you may be like, Walt, what the heck are you doing? You're in the middle of a different challenge run, and now you're doing this challenge run? Like, what's going on? Yeah, I know the smart thing to do would probably be to like finish my bows only run first, and then move on to the this kind of challenge run. But I just like couldn't stop think about this kind of thing. I was just so curious. I was coming up with all these like different strategies in my head, and I was like so curious about this type of run to see if like it would work. Like I literally couldn't sleep. I couldn't even like go to sleep. I tried so hard, but like my brain would not let me sleep until I at least got started on trying to figure out if something like this was possible. Which brings me a little bit to what the rules of this challenge run is. Basically, the big rule is, of course, I am not allowed to use weapons. Now, what that means is I can't obviously do damage to enemies. Also, I am not allowed to use weapons' secondary effects. So things like the Light Brand, or the Brave, which gives Link a lot of luck and also lets him heal. The Brave Lance gives Finn a lot of luck. The Kingmaker, which has the Charm skill, etc., etc. Not allowed to hold those in my inventory. I'm also going to try and avoid... Now, obviously, it's unavoidable because you get a character and they start with a weapon. But I'm going to try and avoid as much as possible characters holding weapons that they can use. They can hold weapons that they can't use, but they can't hold weapons that they can use. Now, the reason being is this changes the enemy AI, especially with enemies with ranged weapons. If they see you're holding a weapon, they'll, like, attack you from a distance, which, you know, it influences their AI. And also, when you're not holding a weapon, you can be very easily captured, which is part of the fun of this run. So I'm gonna try and avoid characters holding weapons that they can use as much as possible. So that's the big rules. Now, what is allowed? Staves are allowed. Thief actions are allowed, and dance actions are allowed. Also, green NPC units are allowed to utilize weapons because they're not under my control, so they can do what they want. Now, it's time to talk about exceptions, because as I just mentioned at the beginning of the video, this run is technically impossible. Specifically, you cannot beat Chapter 1, 2, 2x, 3, or 10. Because whether you decide to kill or capture the boss, both require a use of a weapon. So while the run itself is technically impossible, I still wanted to see how many chapters were possible to beat without weapons. I want to do it with no RNG manipulation. I feel like that's been done before, and don't get me wrong, those runs are really, really cool. Mad respect for people who do those kinds of challenge runs of Thracia. But I feel like if I do that too, I'm not really adding anything to the conversation. I want to use the, I guess, RNG seeds that the game gives me, and see, even with just those, I can come up with reliable strategies. So, trying to avoid no capped out constitution, no capped stats, no rigging RNG to go in my favor, no, like, running around the map with a million moves. Like none of that, if that makes sense. Now, in regards to save states, I'm going to try and avoid them as much as possible. I'll kind of do the FE12 checkpoint system, where like I'll give myself like a checkpoint at one point. When I find out like, okay, I can reliably do this section, I'll checkpoint myself here. I'll maybe try and limit myself to maybe only 2, maybe 3 checkpoints per chapter. And I think that's pretty much it. On that note, I don't know if the other chapters are possible to beat without weapons. I'm kind of in uncharted territory, so I haven't really done the playthrough yet, so right now, past me is in the same boat as all of you right now watching this video. So, fingers crossed that, you know, this video, the future me is able to come up with some entertaining strategies. And yeah, so I'm kind of on this ride with you. So, without further ado, let's cut the future me and see how he did.
So Chapter 1 serves as a nice tutorial for this run. All we have to do is use Abel to distract all these enemies, then we later bait an archer to follow us and then block its path, and then later guide a soldier to a trap. Yes, that's going to be the main aspect of this run. Now you may be wondering why we are using Marty and Dagdar to bait out this soldier. Well, I imagine a lot of you are thinking, oh man, that's super challenging constantly getting attacked by enemies without being able to fight back. How will you survive? Oh my friend, I wish it were that easy. See, a core mechanic in this game is that if one of your units has no weapon and a lower constitution than an enemy unit with a short-range weapon, that enemy will instantly capture that unit. Do not pass go, do not collect 200 gold, and do not even get an opportunity to roll the RNG. You are just insta-captured. And since we don't have weapons, there's no way to save a captured unit. Well, there's technically a way much later in the game, but it involves utilizing a resource we cannot afford to waste. So pretty much captured units are cooked. So what we need to do is make sure we are using high constitution units to bait out the enemies and get them to where we need to go. Anyway, we purposely get Tanya captured by this soldier guarding the shop so we can go shopping with Dagdar, and this is where we sell all of our weapons so we can buy as many vulneraries as possible. And unfortunately, you cannot get past the boss without killing or capturing him. Trust me, I tried a bunch of different things. It's simply no use. You must kill or capture this boss to proceed, which unfortunately requires the utilization of a weapon. So Chapter 2 is a bit more complicated, but not by much. We block this path with Marty and Dagdar, bait this bandit archer with Finn, ride to the boss with Finn, distract one archer bandit with Leaf on one side, distract the other with Abel on the other side, and then block the bridge with Halvon. And while it does get a bit hectic and dicey, all my units survive, and we kill the boss with Finn, as this is another boss that we cannot get past without killing or capturing. Chapter 2X is a massive difficulty spike, and it took quite a lot of attempts and experimentation to figure it out. My biggest obstacle was making sure I do not get blocked off by bandits, because it completely blocks my progress on a map where time is of the essence. Because if too much time passes, the reinforcements and just enemies in general will flood the darkness, making progression impossible as I don't have enough vulneraries to wait thousands of turns taking out all these enemies' weapon uses. As yes, while enemies who run out of weapon uses do run away, I simply don't have the resources to tank all that out. But I also can't be too aggressive, as that has resulted in Leaf's death several times. What I eventually figured out is that by moving Dagdar forward, but not too forward each turn, we get in a situation where we can move Dagdar down here, and then keep moving him down once he has their attention, allowing him to distract these bandits, which lets us get past the bridge. Abel almost gets blocked, but since it's only one bandit, we are able to move around them. Also, Finn with his 8 con looks like he's in danger here, but fun fact, this is one of the few maps where enemies do not capture you. Oh yes, they can certainly block our path, but they cannot capture our units here, for some reason. A bandit archer also tries to block us, but we bait him out and get him out of the way and get everyone across the bridge. We make our first checkpoint of the run here, which I wasn't too happy about, but it was late at night and I was tired, so whatever. After several attempts of Leaf dying and me returning to the checkpoint, I eventually figure out that I need to make a line of units like this. And while enemy phase is quite hectic, with several units almost dying, a little hole is created for my units to slip by. So that's exactly what we do. We slip by a majority of the enemies, and while the enemies behind us are still dangerous, they are now behind us, allowing us to get across the final bridge, and unfortunately, we must kill or capture Lithus to get by. Chapter 3 was also surprisingly very difficult. I start the chapter by getting Abel captured purposely to get a soldier out of the way, and then I block the reinforcement spawn points with Marty and Dagdar. Then, after several turns of baiting and blocking enemies, I purposely get Ronan captured to get this soldier out of the way. Then, after more blocking, I make a huge mistake by opening the doors on both sides way too early. This leads us in a seemingly unwinnable situation where my units are surrounded by enemies on all sides, all of whom can capture Leaf, except for that soldier he and Finn are blocking now, who has 6 constitution. It being late, I reluctantly made a checkpoint here, and then, after several attempts of trying to escape this position, I eventually find a solution. I move Orson and Halvon down here, and move Marty over here to divide up the enemies. Then we move Lithus and Sophia so that they are behind Leaf and Finn. Enemy phase plays out and we are in a slightly more secure situation. From here, we move further down with Orson and Halvon, and Marty further to the left. This makes the enemies naturally move further down as well as further to the left. We then keep moving down with Orson and Halvon, and now the majority of the enemies are either completely out of the way or blocked off, besides some archers and an armor archer who cannot capture us. They are also low on bow durability as well, so they'll run away soon. This allows us to move Lithis, Leaf, and Sophia to the right side, where they can be safe from capture and go save the villagers. Once we get into the base from the right side, we tank out this meteor mage. We also made a second checkpoint right before, as I did not want to lose progress after getting out of that seemingly unwinnable situation. While we are doing that, Finn unfortunately dies, as he just did not have enough vulneraries to survive any longer. Lithis also gets lucky and dodges a meteor hit that would have killed him, but then next turn we forget to heal him and he does get hit. So we go back to the checkpoint and make sure we don't forget to heal Lithis this time. At this point, the majority of the armors and soldiers are completely out of the way and primed to get stuck in the forest. The soldiers' aggressive AI are going to keep trying to move to attack Orson and Halvon, but since a majority of them are blocked off and can't reach them, they are just going to stand there for the rest of the map and do nothing. This finally allows us to safely rescue the villagers. And this enemy armor guy guarding the villages does not move either as long as we do not get in his range. The reason being is he has a little thing called Chapter 5 AI, which we will go over later. But even when we do put someone in his range, he's still easy enough to get around and leave in the dust. To get past the last 3 enemies, we get this soldier to follow Marty, this armor to follow Dagdar, and this sorcerer to follow Lithis. Then, unfortunately, because we cannot get past this boss without killing or capturing him, we kill the boss with Leaf. And once I ensure Leaf and Lithis' Chapter 3 inventory, which determines what is in the chests in Chapter 4, is all set up, we seize. Not the greatest start to this run, since every chapter so far, we had to use weapons. But trust me, things are about to get a lot more interesting. Now, Chapter 4 I've already beaten without weapons, although the way I did it before was absolutely insane. If you're curious to watch some insanity, I linked my long video on my experience utilizing this utterly bonkers strategy in the description. But this time around, I decided to use a strategy that is a little bit more sane. I start by purposely getting Machia captured, then I open the door with Lara, and then block off the soldier on the left from capturing Lara with Lithis and Brighton, as he only has 6 constitution. The Green Bandit unit then saves Machia from her fate of being captured. I then block off the soldier again, and the Green Bandit unit finishes that soldier off, leaving us free to do our thing. From here, I block off the reinforcement spawn points while getting all the treasure with Lara. While doing this, the green units take out the armors blocking the door. After 60 turns of blocking the spawn points, I make a checkpoint, which I think is more than fair. And then, after I save the villagers and while they head to the exit, I finally open the door that has all the armors. Now, figuring out a way to escape with everyone and recruit Dhalsim did take some trial and error, but eventually I figure out a strategy. I place Brighton here so that Dhalsim captures him, and Dhalsim is slowed down significantly thanks to Brighton's high constitution. This allows us to play Ring Around the Rosie once with all my units, then I send all my units besides Leaf to the escape point, and bring Leaf around in the nick of time to recruit Dhalsim. And then I play Ring Around the Rosie one more time while blocking off the path with Brighton and Dhalsim, as both of them have a high enough constitution that Dhalsim is absolutely in no danger, and Brighton only has a small risk of being captured. And luckily, it seems the enemies with ranged weapons go in the front, and Dhalsim and Brighton also have a lot of HP and defense from this early on, so blocking with them is safe. Leaf does get attacked a few times by ranged weapons, but he has high enough speed where it's not much of an issue. After a couple turns of tanking, I'm able to escape with the rest of my units. Chapter 4X seemed completely impossible. Just starting off the map, we immediately have 4 armors who can capture anyone besides Dhalsim, 4 soldiers who can capture most of my units besides Brighton and Dhalsim unless I get lucky, which we'll get to in a bit, and 4 mages who can capture Lara, Karine, and even Leaf and Lithis if I get unlucky. The beginning just seemed like instant death. And even if we get past that, we still have to get past 2 more armors and 3 more soldiers in the final room before the exit, all of whom can just insta-capture most of my units. I'll be honest, as a joke, I just wanted to see if I could escape with just Leaf so that I could say this chapter is technically possible, but not practical to do on a run like this. But after an absolute metric ton of experimentation, I not only found a solution to escape with Leaf, but a solution to escape with almost everyone. And it was freaking epic. Definitely the most fun chapter in the run so far. Let's get into it. So the first thing I discover is that the first large group of enemies actually do not have aggressive AI. They only attack you when you get in their range. This was a shocking discovery, as I always thought the AI was aggressive overall on this chapter, but nope, kinda makes me appreciate the chapter more in a sense. So anyway, all the mages have 6 moves by default, while all the armors only rolled 5. They usually have 5, but sometimes they can roll 6. So if we do not move forward, we can be in range of the mages, but not in range of the armors. So we can bait the mages down, steal their tome with Lithis, and even rescue Lithis to make sure they stay out of the armor's range. We also get Machia captured turn 1 so we can get one of the soldiers on the right out of the way. Once all the mages either have their tome stolen or get killed by Asbel, With that soldier that captured YayMarsha out of the way, we squeeze Lara through the gap and open the door that has 3 villagers. We then rescue Lara with Dawson so she doesn't get captured. This puts Dawson in the perfect spot so that the armor that's most to the right comes over to attack Dawson. Leaf is also placed in a spot where he's just outside the armor furthest to the left's range, but perfectly in the bottom left soldier's range. So that soldier comes down to attack Leaf. Thankfully, the soldier only had 6 constitution, so he cannot capture Leaf or Lithis. And finally, the last soldier on the right goes to capture one of the 3 villagers, getting that soldier out of the way. The other villagers move to escape, which is exactly what we want. But before the next turn, we rescue Karin to make sure that she cannot be captured by that bottom soldier. Next enemy phase, because enemies always prioritize capturing over attacking, the armor chooses to instead capture one of the villagers instead of attacking Dawson, getting that armor out of the way. The soldier towards the bottom chooses to attack Lithis from Lithis' right side, which thankfully doesn't block his path forward. The 3rd villager escapes, which is just fine. Since Lithis has 7 move, he has just enough move to squeeze through the gap that soldier no longer occupies, as well as just barely stay out of the most left armor's range, as well as barely get out of the bottom soldier's range to get to the left side. There, we encounter another soldier who luckily only has 6 constitution, so he cannot capture Leaf or Lithis. The soldier towards the bottom does attack Leaf, but luckily he attacks Leaf from the right, so he is not blocking Leaf's path forward, allowing Leaf with 6 move to have just enough to move in such a way he's only in range of the soldier most to the left and not in the armor's range or the soldier towards the bottom's range, as that soldier only has 5 movement. This causes the bottom soldiers to start attacking Bright. The next step is to block the reinforcement spawn points. We block the right spawn point with Dawson and Lara, the bottom stairs with Brighton and Fergus, and Lithis and the soldier attacking Lithis block the left stairs, with Leaf carrying an extra vulnerary use if Lithis needs it. Then we wait until turn 32, which not only makes it so no more reinforcements come, but this serves the dual purpose of running these soldiers out of weapon uses to get them to run away. After 32 turns, when the soldiers run out of weapon uses, we take a deep breath. But we are not done. There are still 3 Armor Knights left hiding in the darkness. The next part is very delicate and the most important. We carefully get over to the right side, and the best idea seems to just be to use the remaining 3 villagers to get rid of the 3 remaining armors. But there's a major problem with that. See, we need to use Sed to defeat all the enemies in the final room before the exit. Asbel just recruits himself, and even if there was a way to manipulate Asbel's green unit AI to kill them, I want that scroll. But the problem is, if all the villagers are off the map, whether they're rescued by your units, captured by enemy units, or they all escape, Sed will instantly leave the map, which is not what we want. So what we have to do is utilize 2 of the 3 villagers to get rid of 2 of the armors, and then in order to prevent the last villager from escaping, but also make sure it still stays on the map, we keep rescuing and rescue dropping her behind us, making it so that she's in an endless loop of trying to escape, but never can, while also always keeping her on the map. We continue doing this until we no longer need Sed, so pretty much for the rest of the map. This works, and Sed stays on the map. Then we bait over the last armor over to the left side with Dawson, leaving no enemies between us and the door. So we open the door, and then this happens. Oh, let's go! Get him, Sed! Yeah! Oh, get absolutely wrecked. Oh my gosh, after all that. After that epicness, we can finally open the door to the final room. We make sure to open the door with Asbel, who has a 1-use door key, rather than Lithis or Lara, who will lose their lockpick if they do it. Asbel does get captured, but that's totally fine, because Sed comes over and shows his pupil how things are done, and absolutely wrecks all of these seemingly unpassable enemies on the way over there. After Sed finishes wrecking all the enemies, since Sed is still here, I'm feeling super confident and hyped, so I decide, might as well get the treasure as well. This almost ends up being a huge mistake, as Lara almost gets one shot. But once the enemies are out of the treasure room, Sed wrecks them. We get the treasure, give the HP ring to Lithis, and escape with everyone. You guys have no idea how freaking hyped I was after this. Like, to this day, this is mind-blowing. I cannot freaking believe this chapter is possible without weapons. And it's actually optimal to come to this chapter due to the treasure you get. And more importantly, the scroll you get from Sed, which will be helpful for the rest of this run. But more importantly, super helpful for next chapter. Now, chapter 5 is another chapter I've already done weaponless, which I'll link in the description, but this time I have way less vulneraries due to chapter 4 and 4X shenanigans, so I'll have to be a bit more creative. Oh, and side note, there's no way for us to save Avel and Nana, so they immediately get captured. Now, starting off, there will be a group of aggressive mages that will chase us down. We cannot take them all at once without weapons. So to prevent this, we place 5 units against the wall to bait 5 mages to attack us. Then we wait 2 turns, then move a unit off the wall, then repeat the process 5 times. One of those mages though are plagued with Chapter 5 AI, which I'll explain in a sec. This will cause the mages to keep moving away from the wall and begin their aggressive AI pathing, but now they are separated from the pack, which means they'll come one at a time and Lithis can steal their tomes safely one by one. Forgot to mention earlier that enemies without weapons will just run away, so it completely nullifies them. Once we're finished with the aggressive mages, we finally take advantage of that fabled Chapter 5 AI. See, without this AI behavior, this chapter would be impossible. The way it works is that you get into an enemy's range, that enemy goes towards you to attack, but then if you leave their range, the enemy just stands there. You'd think once you'd entered their range the first time, they'd be aggressive until they're killed or tricked into running away, but no. They just frickin' stand there. This blows my mind and is absolutely hilarious. I have absolutely no idea what Kaga was smoking when he made the AI like this. And I call it Chapter 5 AI because this is the chapter where it is the most relevant, and the only reason this chapter is possible without weapons. Anyway, we demonstrate this AI behavior by baiting this sniper over to attack us through the wall. Then, when we move away from the wall, the sniper and mage are now stuck there for the rest of the map, which will make our escape much easier later. You might have noticed it already in action with the mage just standing there not moving earlier, but you will see this AI in action more clearly as we deal with these 2 armors and 2 mages blocking the path. We bait this mage by putting a unit here, then bait him towards the rest of the party, then steal his tome, get one of our units captured to get rid of this armor, bait the other mage, and then for the final armor, we place Brighton here, then we move Brighton his full movement and rescue him with Dhalsim, and now you can clearly see Chapter 5 AI at work as that armor is stuck down there and will not move for the rest of the map. Absolutely frickin' bonkers. After that, we tank out these 4 soldiers blocking the path. This is where said scroll really comes in handy. See, last time I played this chapter weaponless, I constantly had to worry about a crit, even from the soldiers, and especially the archers. It was a small chance, but a chance nonetheless, and I would have to heal accordingly. Now with this scroll, they can't crit, so I only need to heal Dhalsim when I'm 1 hit away from death, which saves tremendously on vulnerary uses. This could even let us tank out the battle axe armors who have a decent amount more crit, but the thing is, they also have pretty high attack, and enemies with short-range weapons only lose a weapon use if they hit. So I felt it'd be too taxing on my vulnerary supply to tank them out, so I just allowed that armor to capture one of my units instead. Also, all of these enemies have vulneraries, so once they are out of weapon uses, we make sure to steal their vulneraries. Next, we need access to the fighting pit, so we tank the hero who's still there out with Dhalsim. It's 40 uses of an iron sword, but he doubles, so tanking him out isn't too bad. That hero then escapes, giving us full access to the fighting pit. Our next step is getting past all these archers as well as the boss. We tank out the first archer as it doesn't do too much damage, but the others do. However, they all have Chapter 5 AI. The second archer we put Leaf in range who has a lot of luck, and have Lithis who has a scroll wait outside the wall. We guide the archer to the wall with Leaf and then get Leaf at a range so the archer attacks Lithis. And then we guide the archer with Lithis far, far away. Next, it's time to lure 2 archers at the same time. Then we separate them because their new positioning makes it so we only have to be in one of their ranges. We bring that separated archer over here, and then the other one we guide toward the wall where Leaf can guide this archer, then put Lithis here and here to get both archers to come further down the hallway. Next up is the boss, who also has Chapter 5 AI, for some reason. Anyway, the boss is the reason we needed the fighting pit. As we guide him to get stuck there, we accidentally rebait this archer, but that's a problem for later. We continue to bait the boss, we bait him to this corner and then get out of his range. Now, the boss is no longer a threat in the most hilarious way possible. But now, we need to rebait this archer as he's in the way. So what we do is bait him to this spot, which keeps us out of the other archer's way, and puts just enough space to escape the fighting pit with everyone. I did put everyone there so that they wouldn't interfere with the earlier archer baiting. The final archer we bait over here, giving us just enough room to squeeze through. Then we tank out this meteor mage, and now we have enough vulneraries to tank out these 2 javelin soldiers. What's nice about enemies with 2 ranged weapons is that they do not need to hit when attacking from 2 range in order for it to count as a weapon use. So the tanking goes much faster. And now, all that's left is this armor and this soldier. Then we are home free. We bait both to the left with Dhalsim, and then I could have just waited one more turn to get them to go a little bit more left, but I get overeager and accidentally move Brighton and Karin in range. This was devastating. It was so close to the end, and of course, when I could taste victory, when I let my guard down for just a moment, is when I make my biggest mistake. Karin is a fail condition where I would have to reset. I'm able to save her with Lithis, but he's also a failed condition, and I really did not want to reset this far in. So in a desperate attempt to save Lithis, I place Lara in front of him. Now, Lithis still has the potential to be captured here. All that would have to happen is the soldier goes for Lara, and then the armor can get Lithis. But thank Naga, I got extremely lucky, and the armor goes for Lara, while the soldier goes for Bright. Well, actually, I think I know what happened, but I'll go into that later. So at the time, I was thinking, dang, not Lara, there goes my dancer. But little did I know, losing Lara here would have unseen extreme consequences that would severely affect the rest of this run. Yeah. Anyway, we steal back all our stuff we lost from the double capture, steal this mage's tome, and after what felt like years, finally, first try, we finally escape with everyone. Chapter 6 was surprisingly more difficult than I thought it would be, but that's only because we attempt to recruit Hicks, a mounted unit who also has high constitution. So his recruitment is definitely worth it, especially after all the units we lost. After several attempts of trying to find a route where Hicks doesn't die or my units get blocked off, here's what I figured out. So before we recruit Hicks, we bait this soldier over here, as these soldiers are the ones who are the problems that keep blocking me off. Then we recruit Hicks and then place Karine here so she's in range of one soldier, but not in range of the one we baited earlier. This causes the baited soldier to head towards Karine, and the soldier in range attacks her. After that, we place Dhalsim here to block off the soldiers. Then next turn we rescue Hicks with Karine, and then use Dhalsim to rescue drop Hicks here. That lower armor doesn't move unless you get in its range, so from here, we've won. Before we leave, we sell a bunch of stuff to buy door keys for later, then we escape with everyone. Chapter 7 was really freaking cool. Because we were unable to kill Shiva in 2x, we do need to get past his cell swords. At first, I try and bait each individual cell sword away so Dhalsim can get through, but that goes about as well as you'd expect. Dhalsim simply cannot survive long enough for me to do that. We try again, and the next attempt is absolutely wild. So this time, we have Dhalsim promote and have him and Hicks pluck Leaf off in the bushes here. What makes these Cavaliers so dangerous is that they're mounted units, and as I mentioned before, all mounted units have capped constitution, which means they can capture pretty much everyone except a unit that has capped constitution or any mounted unit. Luckily, Dhalsim here does have capped constitution, and Hicks is mounted. Anyway, by placing Hicks and Dhalsim there, for whatever reason, this causes the cell swords to go south, which is something I've never seen before, except there is one that goes north. Not only that, but Shiva gets a movement star, which hilariously puts him right in range to be recruited by Sophia, making one of the most annoying recruitments in the game really easy. Then we place Karine in such a way where she's not in range, but we are trying to go as close to enemy range as possible to get the cell swords to go towards her. This works on the other cell swords as they go towards Karine and Lithis. Meanwhile, Hicks is in a precarious situation, as all of these enemies have force-effective weapons. It's close, but he barely survives. Next turn, we put Karine in the mountains so that she's close to the cell swords, but also closer to the escape point. I actually put her too close and she was in range of one, but luckily she dodges and the rest of the cell swords come towards her. And Hicks, by what I can only describe as sheer luck and AI incompetence, somehow manages to survive, because for some reason the Cavalier all the way in the back decides to attack first, instead of the Cavaliers who are literally right next to him, and then they can't canto away since it's used all its movements to get over here. Absolutely hysterical. Next, we fly as far down as we can with Karine, and the cell swords come towards Karine and Lithis. They are right when I want them, and in the perfect position for me to spring the trap. Meanwhile, surely, these Cavaliers with effective weaponry can manage to kill Hicks. And yet, they do the same thing. A Cav all the way in the back, instead of one super close to Hicks, decides to attack Hicks first, and once again, they cannot canto away. This AI, yo, like, what is happening? Not that I'm complaining. Finally, we spring the trap with Lithis and the green units come to the rescue. Then we fly away with Karine. Escaping causes the Cavs to run away, and my assumption was that the green units would just distract the cell swords, as from the many times I played this chapter, I was fairly certain the green units wouldn't do anything, as I've never seen them do something. But then, this happens. Wait, what? They do something? Oh, well, him capturing him is not the best, but I can't believe this. I've never seen these guys, like, do anything before. This is wild. Oh, another capture now. Hannibal! Oh my
god! Hannibal did something!
Ah! So with all the sellswords getting killed by the armors, except for this one who we can easily bypass, we buy a bunch of vulnaries, then escape with everyone. So considering how difficult Chapter 8 was on my bows only run, I was not looking forward to this chapter. But luckily, it wasn't too bad. We can kinda just place our mounted and high constitution units wherever, as long as it's not in a corner, and the bandits will move in such a way that they don't block our path forward. So getting past them is no problem. While this is going on, I stealthily use Karin to sneak past the enemies and fly Leaf towards the other side of the map. While heading there, we drop Leaf over here to bait the warrior guarding the bridge to attack him. Then we rescue Leaf again and fly into the mountains, where they will stay for a little while. Meanwhile, we recruit Marty, move Hicks to block off the bandit reinforcements that spawn in the corner from flooding in. Leave Orson behind to not only bait over that warrior from before, but to block off all the bandits behind us from flooding in. This looks scary, but he has a ton of vulnaries, so he'll be okay. Later, we switch out Hicks with Marty to block off those bandits and move him towards Callion to cover the last of the reinforcement spawn points. Now, with all the enemies either being blocked off or blocked from spawning, we are safe to wait until turn 16, where the boss mounts, decides to hilariously just give up guarding the gate, and then attacks Marty, then flies backwards. The time to act is now. We fly over with Karin and place Leaf in a way where I intend to seize next turn. And to make sure the boss doesn't interfere if he gets a movement star, I wasn't entirely sure if he could capture units, but I wasn't going to risk it, I put Callion in range, which is incredibly risky since the boss has a horse slayer. But luckily, Callion dodges. Next turn, I realized I accidentally put Leaf on a ledge instead of the ground because I didn't see the small black line. And even editing this, I fell for the exact same trick, not realizing that was a ledge, so I definitely don't blame past me for that mistake. So I rescue Leaf and rescue drop him next to the gate so he can 100% seize next turn. I am unsure whether Callion or Hicks will survive, so I split the vulnaries between them, so if one dies, it sucks, but at least I won't lose anything. The boss attacks, he has a super low hit rate, I cross my fingers and... no dice. Well, if you can't dodge a 37%, I have no use for you. Bye Callion. Next turn, we seize. Easier than I thought. I guess Karin without weapons is better than Ronan even when he has weapons. That's hilarious. Chapter 9 was the opposite of Chapter 8, in that I thought it'd be extremely easy. After all, literally, we just walk across the mountains to the escape point and win. How hard could it be? Well, the Draco Knights certainly have something to say about that. They plan to make this chapter as brutal and as painful as possible. These Draco Knights are extremely aggressive, and their AI is smart too, really pushing to head for that escape point. They can be there by like turn 3, turn 4, which is absolutely insane, and once they get up there, I'm screwed. And it takes like 4 to 5, maybe even 6 turns to cross the mountains, so not ideal. I at first try to distract them with the Foursome Fearsome, but that goes about as well as you'd expect. Next, we try to distract them with Marty. Marty has capped constitution, so he cannot be captured by these mounted Draco Knights. But we can only distract one grunt and the boss, and Marty can't survive the boss anyway when he's not promoted. And I already used the Master Seal on Dawson. Finally, out of desperation, I try distracting them with Karin, and that also goes just as well as you'd expect. After a couple attempts using these and many other different methods to try and distract these Draco Knights, eventually, I throw my hands up in the air and decide that getting past this chapter is just going to require a lot of sacrifice. We bring Dawson, who is guaranteed to not be able to escape, as he cannot go over mountains, and he's not getting past the large cluster of enemies on the other side. But he's the only one who can tank out Draco Knight Grunt, the Meteor Mage, and the boss, so it is what it is. As for the other 3 grunts, we'll just have to sacrifice units and purposely get them captured. We place Alba on this mountain, and Alba's sacrifice gets rid of one of the grunts. 1 Draco Knight Grunt goes for Dawson, while the remaining 2 Draco Knight Grunts again have good AI, so they don't go towards Dawson and instead fly to the side, focused on that escape point. But at the very least, they don't fly upwards, which saves me some time. Dawson does a good job tanking. Next, we weave Kane in between the soldiers and Draco Knight's range, as we want him to be captured by the Draco Knights, not the soldier. The only soldier that does attack him has a lower constitution than him, so we successfully get him captured by the Draco Knight. We have 1 Draco Knight Grunt left. We decide to sacrifice Shiva, so we rescue him with Karin and rescue drop him right here with Selphina, and then surround him with Selphina and Robert so the soldiers can't capture him. The plan works, and the Draco Knight captures Shiva. With all the Draco Knights either distracted or running away, the last thing we need to do is make a wall so all these soldiers, armors, and archers cannot get past. We use Selphina, Dagdar, and Hicks as our wall. And at this point, we've beaten the chapter, but I still want to see if Dalton can survive. Sure, he can't escape, but if he survives, I can get him again in 21x. But he's out of vulneraries at this point, and he gets hit by the boss. So he needs to dodge just one more hit from the boss in order for him to survive, as I can escape with the remainder of my units, including Leaf, next turn, ending the chapter. The boss attacks, I cross my fingers, and... no dice. This really sucks. I lost 4 units on this chapter. Shiva, who's not very good anyway due to low constitution, Kane and Alba, who could have actually been really useful because they're mounted units, and Dalton, who I wasted a Master Steel on. And this was at a time where I really needed units, as I already lost so many in Chapter 5. Well, we escaped with who we had left, and hopefully we can replenish our ranks later. Not gonna lie, Chapter 10 was pretty tedious. The beginning isn't too bad. We basically get to come up with a creative solution to rescue drop Lithis close to the top house, as well as stay out of the ballista range with Karin to get the rescue staff. And then, the biggest challenge presents itself. That being this Draco Knight boss who on multiple occasions will swoop in and capture Lithis. The way we deal with this is something I wanted to test based on what happened in Chapter 5. If you remember, the enemy chose to capture Brighton and Laura instead of Laura and Lithis, so I'm fairly certain the enemy capture priority is based on the units that have the better stats. So I tested this by having Lithis and Selphina in range of this Draco Knight boss, with Selphina having better stats than Lithis. And sure enough, the plan works, and the Draco Knight boss captures Selphina over Lithis. Then we promote Lithis with the Master Seal we got from Selphina last chapter. From here though, things get tedious, as we have to tank out all the ballistas on the map so Karin can fly around freely. Then, at this point, the only threats left on the map are those soldiers on the bottom and the cavaliers all the way to the left, as none of the other enemies on the map move. We place Havon here, which causes the soldiers and cavs to start moving, but a majority of the cavs get stuck down here near Havon, along with the soldiers and mage. They are all trying to attack Havon all at once, but are blocked off, so they'll just stay here for the rest of the map. There is one cav that goes towards my other units, but we block it off with Marty, while using the damage Marty takes as an opportunity to get Sophia to A ranks and staffs. Then, at this point, the map is over, and unfortunately, this is another boss that we cannot get past without killing or capturing. So we steal the boss's Master Steel with Lithis, kill the boss with Leaf, restock on vulneraries, and seize. If all goes according to plan, this will be the last time the utilization of weapons will be required. Okay, so before we get to Chapter 11, just want to quickly mention that you'll notice on the prep screen some units are fatigued but still deployable, but some are fatigued and not deployable. This is due to the fact that we have so many fatigued characters and so little units that we wouldn't meet the minimum deployment limit if we couldn't deploy any of the fatigued characters. As to how the game determines which fatigued characters get deployed and which don't, at the time, I thought it was random. But don't worry, we will get back to this. Now, with that out of the way, this chapter was an absolute nightmare. Oh, okay. Gotta calm down. So basically, I wanted to conserve warp uses and beat this chapter warpless. And by the end of me trying to do that, I realized this could have been the coolest clear of the whole run. Maybe even more badass than Chapter 4X. But we'll get to that. But it was impossible, guys. It was just a freaking living nightmare. I spent so freaking long just trying to do it, I was going completely and utterly insane. So the beginning is not that bad. We just have to trap these soldiers and archers in the left area. The soldiers and archers have very smart AI though, and sometimes like the flank, so we have to be very careful with our positioning. But overall, not too bad. But then we get to the nightmare. These freaking armors. Okay. So the goal is to get these armors all to get stuck in the right side, just as we did with the soldiers and archers on the left side. But when I tried doing this, I swore that their AI was just to move around randomly. And I actually looked it up, and my mind was freaking blown as I found out I was right. Why? Why do they just wander around randomly? It's not threatening. I know Kempf wants to trick us, but them moving around like that is just more suspicious. In normal gameplay, it doesn't make the map any harder. Honestly, it just looks goofy. But on this run, without weapons, oh my gosh. So here's the problem. Because the AI is random, controlling them to go somewhere is near impossible. The only way to control their movements is to get into their range, but otherwise it's random. Sometimes they'll randomly move too far down and start attacking you while you're doing the thing with the archers and soldiers, or just in general, move down when you're in the middle of doing something and completely screw up your strategy. Sometimes they'll randomly move far back and get stuck back there, making things much more difficult and annoying later. Sometimes they just stay in the center area forever and you are forced to put yourself in a risky situation between two choke points where you can get trapped just for them to come down. And speaking of that is another annoyance I discovered. Instead of doing what makes sense and attacking the character with the lowest defense, enemies will instead choose to surround a character. In normal gameplay, attacking a stronger character just to surround them is dumb, as you just have a better chance of killing the enemy or surviving. And I refuse to believe that they actually program the enemies to react to you not having weapons. That would be ludicrous. I lost count on the amount of attempts where an enemy attacked the character with higher stats both in strength and defense, when again, in normal gameplay that would be really dumb, but they seem to do it for the sole purpose of surrounding that unit, which in this specific run means that characters can no longer move. Extremely frustrating, with all of this piling on top of each other. This was the most nightmarish, awful experience in the run so far. I cannot tell you the absurd amount of attempts I gave this. I was going completely insane. Anyway, I'll show off my most clean attempt. Not my most successful, but my most clean, so I can, in the most comprehensive way, show you how involved a single attempt at this is. So we start by baiting the soldiers and archers with Dagdar. We place Dagdar here and here, being careful not to go too far ahead so the soldiers and archers don't try and flank. Then we place Orson, Karin, and Dagdar in range of 3 soldiers to guarantee that they do not try and flank still. This works, and the enemies start to move past the top choke point. Then I give the soldiers 5 targets to guarantee they come past the choke point. This worked and all the soldiers are in. Now we just need to ensure the archers get in. We move Orson back to give more room for the archers to come in, and move our other units down to exit through the bottom choke point. Thanks to us giving more room, the soldiers and archers are now fully between both choke points. Then we have Hicks block off the top choke point, while Marty, who we promoted earlier, is blocking the bottom one. To get Orson out of there, we rescue him with Karin, and we switch Hicks' position with Dagdar, who also baits over the first armor. Next, we use Karin and Orson to bait this armor over to this spot right here. Meanwhile, we bait these 2 armors with Hicks to come to this spot right here. Then we use Robert to bait another armor down, and Leaf to bait the one that was attacking Dagdar. Hicks does get surrounded, but on this spot, which is fine, as we use Karin to rescue him when he was dismounted, then rescue dropped him in front of those 2 armors. So now they're the ones blocked off, while also guiding this armor down there with Robert. That's 4 armors now, in between the top and bottom choke points on the right, and 2 who we run out of weapon uses, as Leaf is being attacked at range, and Dagdar's skill of cost makes it so he's usually attacked twice, which also helps in running these armors at a durability. So 5 more armors left to go. There should actually be 6, as there's 12 total, but I forgot what happened to the other one. We use Karin to bait over the next armor, where we guide to go over here. Orson gets surrounded, but not a big deal. We use Robert, Hicks, and Karin to help guide the next armor, who we guide over here. Then Hicks guides the next armor, and after Orson has been rescue dropped to now be above those 2 armors, we have Hicks lead this armor over here, and then we lead this armor with Karin and Orson to come over here. Then we rescue Hicks to get him out of there and block the top choke point. Rescue Orson so we can take Hicks' place in blocking that choke point. Then we use Hicks to bait this armor down to start attacking Orson, and now we've done it! We've trapped or distracted all the armors. So we transfer Leaf to Hicks to start tanking out the ballista. While that's happening, I decide to slowly but surely release the enemies from their choke points and make a mad dash to that choke point at the front of the fortress. That way we'll regain access to move most of our characters, while only leaving one to tank all the enemies from one singular choke point. We remove Marty, then Robert, then we remove Orson 1 turn too early. As a result, I get completely blocked off. At this point, it was only a matter of time before all my units were killed off, ending this attempt. This was my last attempt trying to do this. At this point, I was fed up. I threw my hands in the air, decided no more attempts of trying to beat this chapter this way. Now, there were 2 attempts where I did successfully get to the fortress and tanked out the ballista. But on one of them, Sophia got captured, and on the other one, Leaf got captured. But on the attempt where Sophia got captured, I discovered something incredible. Fred, as a green unit, can actually attack and kill these enemies. This was mind-blowing, as all I ever seen him do is run away, but he actually will fight these enemies if they get in his way. So hypothetically, I only need 2 units to make it to the fortress to open the 4 top doors, leaving the bottom 3 doors shut, and then bait the enemies to come towards Fred and he'll kill them all. Hence why I did give Leaf and Hicks all the door keys to do this, but I sadly never saw this plan to fruition. It would have been freaking epic. It would have been so cool, but I just couldn't make it happen. So anyway, after all of this massive crushing disappointment, I decide to warp skip the map. I promote Marty, then warp him to the boss. The way this boss works is once Kempf attacks, he leaves the map. So we let him attack Marty, wait one more turn, Kempf leaves, then we warp leave the seas. However, while we did beat the chapter, Sophia is not only fatigued, but not allowed to be deployed in Chapter 12. So now, it's time to get into how the game chooses which fatigued units get deployed when you are under the minimum deployment requirement. I believe the calculation is your fatigue minus your HP. So for instance, if Lithus had 43 HP but 70 fatigue, his total fatigue level would be 20. Meanwhile, if Sophia had 52 fatigue but 17 HP, while Lithus has the higher overall fatigue, Sophia's fatigue level is higher, being 35. So the game will allow Lithus to be deployed, but not Sophia. So I started to wonder, what if we literally only had enough units to meet the minimum deployment limit? Would the game let me deploy Sophia then? So I go back to Chapter 11, do the same thing, but this time I purposely kill off Hicks and purposely kill off Dagdar. I also get Robert captured, but when I go to the prep screen, I discovered that I still had Robert, which made me realize that on Seize and Defend maps, a capture only counts for the enemies if they are able to escape with the captured unit. If they just have the unit captured when the map ends, it doesn't count. Luckily though, we only needed to get rid of 2 units to meet the minimum deployment limit, so we can now deploy Sophia for Chapter 12. And speaking of Chapter 12, unfortunately, our descent into darkness continues. See, I initially thought this would be one of the easiest chapters of the run, because I remember in my Bows Only run, all I had to do was steal Salem's Sleep Staff and Jormungand Tome, and then I won. But then, I remember in my Bows Only run, I was abusing RNG to get Lithus to have enough Constitution to steal that stuff. So here, Lithus doesn't have the Constitution to steal the stuff, so we need to find another way. So there are 3 ways we established so far that gets enemies to run away in this game. Number 1 is stealing their weapons, which is not an option. Number 2 is getting them to capture one of your units, which seemed ridiculous at the time as I highly doubt a boss on a throne or gate can capture. And number 3 is running them out of weapon uses. Now, I had no idea whether running Salem out of uses would even work, as running other bosses out of weapon uses never worked, and Salem is still a boss, so the whole stealing things from him could have been a fluke. Nor did I know how I was going to survive for 23 turns on this map, but I had to at least try. So starting off, we warped to the boss to start tanking out his Jormungand. But after doing this, I had a horrible realization. First of all, Salem will not start using Jormungand until he breaks or loses his Sleep Staff. But more importantly, Salem does not take an action every turn. Whether he takes an action or not is completely based off of random chance. I don't know what the odds are on whether he acts or not, but this means we definitely need to survive way more than 23 turns to win. On our path to figure out how to do that, the first thing we need to figure out is a safe place for our units to stand, as they are sitting ducks ripe to be captured out in the open. We also need to do something about Marita, as she spawns over to the left side, away from all of my units on turn 2, and has a sword that cannot be dropped. And even when we place her in the corner, the bandits will eventually catch up and find her and attack her, causing her to use her sword, which is against the rules. And she can't be saved by Karin in time due to the high volume of enemies close to that area. So to save Marita, we use a rescue staff to bring her to a place I found that is safe, close to this mountain, and also using 4 units who can't be captured to shield the 4 units who can. We have exactly enough space for the 4 units who can be captured to stay completely safe, so this will be the spot where we do our tanking. Once Salem uses up all of his Sleep Staves, we warp Orson over there to start tanking out Jormungand, and use Karin to plug the hole Orson left. Now you may think my characters in the right corner, especially the ones put to sleep, whose stats besides Constitution is reduced to 0, are going to be in some trouble. Well actually, on defensive terrain, the bandits still don't do too much damage, and I have Sophia on standby to heal my put to sleep units, and they can survive just fine. Karin, while not put to sleep, also still has a lot of avoid, so it's rare she gets hit, and Robert is totally fine. And Sophia is in the perfect spot where she has access to heal our sleepyheads whenever they need it. No, the main problem I have is Orson surviving, as there are several attempts where he just dies. So I wonder if I promote him if he'll have a better chance of surviving. And you know what that means. That's right! It's time to go back to our favorite chapter, Chapter 11! Yay! Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention before is that enemies won't attack a unit if they cannot do damage. So now that Marty doesn't have his defense bonus from promotion, he starts to get attacked from the armors, which makes it a bit more complicated to be attacked by the boss and leave the throne available for Leaf, because where Marty now gets stuck causes this mage to go on the throne. But I'm able to find a way to make it work and get the throne open again for Leaf to warp to. We move to this spot, causing the enemies to move like this, and and then move to this corner, causing that mage to no longer block the throne, so it's open to seize. This time we get Robert killed as he is worse than Hicks, and get Dagdar killed again. Then we promote Orson and Warp Leaf the Seas. Now, back to Chapter 12. This next attempt, Karin ends up dying. She got hit by like 2 10% in a row. Very unlucky. But I decide, screw it, Orson is surviving much better now, so let's run Salem out of uses and see what happens. We successfully run him out of uses, and well, this happens.
Oh my god, I'm so nervous. Please, please work. Please. Come on. It works. It actually works. No way. Oh my god.
It actually works. My mind was blown. Now, we just needed everyone to survive, and I'm golden. But before that, I got curious and wanted to test if it actually was possible to capture bait Salem, and sure enough, it is. Granted, Salem's decision to capture is tied to his randomness of doing something or doing nothing, so if he doesn't capture you the turn you are in front of him, a bandit will just capture you instead. But still, this is huge! Easy solution to win, right? Well, here's the problem. There are only 2 characters you get up to this point that can be captured by Salem, as he only has 4 constitution. Sophia, who we absolutely 100% need before 21X because of her hammer and staff. Without that, it's just going to be impossible to progress at a certain point. And the other unit is, well, it's Laura. Yep, Laura was our ticket to the quick victory on this chapter, but more importantly, she'd be our ticket to 12X. And going to 12X has all kinds of implications on this run. But we'll get to that later. Anyway, I realized that I should probably use a Pegasus Knight, who has better magical defense, to tank out the magic guy Salem, and Orson, especially promoted, is much better at tanking physical hits. I find a perfect spot where Karin won't have to take any hits from the bandits, only Salem. And their non-battle thing, it's epic. They match each other blow for vulnerary. Karin has 9 bones, Salem has 8 uses. 3 uses, 3 bones. And it gets down to literally 1 vulnerary use left, and Salem has 1 use of the Jormungand left. Now, Salem can actually wait me out and decide to just do nothing for multiple turns, and since I'm poisoned, there's not much I can do about that. But I get lucky and he does decide to attack immediately, and despite him hitting me, that was his last use and I still have that last vulnerary. Very freaking epic, and then it happens.
Alright, let's end turn. Yes, get the heck out of there, Salem.
After repairing Sophia's warp staff with hammering, I'm down to 4 uses now, we warp leaf the seas. So I was concerned Chapter 13 would also be brutal considering how tough Chapter 9 was, since they are both escape maps with a similar structure. But luckily, this chapter gives us a nice break when compared to the previous 2 chapters. So the first thing we do is place Glade and this generic cavalier with the highest defense in front of the castle to defend it. But they need vulneraries ASAP. So to get over there in time, we are forced to put Karin in ballista range once. Meanwhile, with my other characters, I surround this Archknight. And as you can see, Glade and this generic are okay at tanking, but they won't last long. Luckily, Karin is on her way as she dodges that ballista. Now we can delay the enemies from getting past the generic by replacing them with another generic to stall for time. And I'll be honest, I really didn't have a strategy from here with my other characters. I just sort of moved them in like a relatively reasonable-ish manner, but yeah, I had no plan. Then we fly over with Karin and dismount so she can be rescued away from the ballista, and now the Cavs and Glade have vulneraries and scrolls, so they'll be able to tank as long as I need. Now, luckily, I didn't even need a strategy to deal with these Archknights, as their hit rates are terrible, and since they only have ranged weapons, they cannot capture anyone. Though, this did not stop Marita from not dodging and dying. But considering she's a low constitution unit, this was pretty much her only chance to shine, and she blew it. Bye, Marita! Luckily for everyone else, the ballistas just go for Lithus. And like I said, the hit rates these guys got are awful, so everyone else is able to dodge just fine, and even if they do get hit, these Archknights' attacks are not very high, so yeah, who needs strategy? Anyway, we use Orson to block the bridge, then it's just a matter of carefully flying everyone over while being very careful to stay on the right side to avoid the ballista and all of the enemy ranges. Now this last part where we need to fly Orson over is a bit more complex as we'd be removing Orson from the choke point. But with us flying here, we stay out of the Archknight's range, then we very, very carefully fly over here, transfer Orson, and dismount so now Karin can be rescued. Now the Archknights make things look really scary, but everyone is already at the escape point at this point, and so we escape with everyone. Well, everyone except for Marita. Chapter 14 is our big break, as it is the easiest chapter in this run so far. We buy 5 stamina drinks, and since this is a defense map, We use the common chi strat of utilizing 3 high defense and capped constitution units / mounted units to guard the 3 choke points at the start of the map, and then wait 10 turns until the map is over. Chapter 15 is also easy. I visit all the villages with Ida and Dean before the bandits destroy them. I also rescue Ralph as a green unit and move him to the other side, as he'll be able to help me out significantly. And since he's a green unit, he can fight the bandits that are aggressively attacking my units. Hicks is used to distract the group on the left, and Havon is used to distract the group on the right. Orson guards the church, and Amalda distracts the rest. With Ralph attacking, eventually all these bandits attacking my units will die. Also on the left side, Hicks has a bit of trouble tanking, so we bring Marty over and help in distracting some of the bandits on the left side. Meanwhile, we bait over this archer bandit with Lithus and guide him to the mountains so we can grind Lithus up so he has 9 constitution for Chapter 16b. We use something called reverse heisting, which I will explain later, to grind up Lithus. While that's all going on, we recruit Ralph. Then, to finish off the chapter, we bait the bandits away from the church. We use Dean, Ida, and Karin to bait the bandits. Dean has rescued Leaf to reduce his stats, and also in preparation to drop Leaf. One of the bandits chases after Sophia and the gang since we use Dean to guide that bandit over there. Karin guides this bandit over here. The other bandits are guided over this way with Dean and Ida. We guide this mercenary over here with Karin. And once all the enemies are guided away enough, we transfer Leaf to Orson and have Orson drop Leaf here, just out of enemy range so he won't be captured. Then we seize the church and go to the B route. Before we begin, just want to mention I use one of my stamina potions on Lithus here. I have 4 left. Then I reach the absolute lowest, most devastating part of the run so far. The Berserk staff, which I 100% need, has 10 weight. I was dumb and mixed up what the weight was between the sleep staff and the Berserk staff. This was utterly devastating because what this meant was I would need to go back to Chapter 15 and yes, manipulate the RNG so that Lithus gets to 11 Constitution. I was deeply unhappy about this, especially because I was going to go on this huge probability explanation on how getting 2 Constitution level ups that have a 10% chance of happening is achievable across 35 trials, but that was all for naught. So I'm adding 1 point of RNG manipulation to the counter, but I'm putting an asterisk around this to show that this scenario can be avoided, but I will get into how later. Anyway, I accept the fact and get on with the chapter, but immediately there's another problem. The boss of this chapter had the same AI as Salem, which means whether he acts or not is random. But if he decides to act on turn 1 or turn 2 before I can steal the Berserk staff, it's a huge problem. You see, this was the tool I was talking about at the beginning of the video that can save a captured unit. If we Berserk the enemy unit that did the capturing, he'll just get killed so we can save a unit. But the Berserk staff is also an extremely valuable resource and we are going to need every single use possible. So whenever the boss uses a Berserk staff use, I have to reset. You can argue this is also some degree of RNG manipulation, or at least just relying on the RNG to go my way, so I'll add 0.25 points to the counter. Now, finally, let's actually talk about the chapter. You may have noticed for a couple seconds I've been avoiding talking about it, and that's because I hate this chapter. Even on a normal playthrough, I absolutely despise this chapter. And as much as I want to tear it to shreds right here, right now, I'll save that for a future video. For now, I'll just talk about my experience with it in the context of this run. So the biggest annoyance on this chapter were those sorcerers. They are just so many due to the reinforcements, so they cover a wide range and are very powerful. These reinforcements come starting turn 2, and they come every single turn. It's an absolute nightmare. I also have to be careful when I steal the Berserk staff, as sometimes the boss will randomly act after that, and with enough hits, he'll eventually kill Lithus. But a Pure Water or Encircle can fix this. At first, I try distracting these sorcerers with Karin, and I also memorize where Sarah warps to so I can recruit her, but doing this ends in complete disaster because as soon as I go over there, all the sorcerers warp over there and they can capture Leaf, so I'm screwed, as there's just so many of them that we get overwhelmed. I try and silence as many as we can with Sarah and Sophia, but it doesn't help as more rewarp over and I just get overwhelmed. Either that would happen or Karin would just keep dying as she just doesn't have the HP to deal with these sorcerers. One of those 2 things kept happening over multiple attempts, so I decided to change things up. This time, I used Dean to distract the sorcerers instead of Karin as he has far more HP. I guide all the sorcerers away from the castle so I can relatively safely place Havon on the spawn point of the reinforcements to stop them from coming. Then I keep guiding the sorcerers away with Dean, then fly away from him with Dean. I don't really remember why I flew away, but that's what I do. And this ends up working out because the sorcerers decide to rewarp to surround Helvon and Lithis. We're able to steal a rewarp staff, which I'll need for later. And while the situation looks dangerous, I use silence on this sorcerer, and this sorcerer. This makes it so Lithis is only taking out 2 sorcerers, and due to his high HP, even if he gets hit by both, he'll be fine. And I'll just vuln up Lithis if he gets hit. Now, he would be in trouble if the boss also attacks him, but for some reason, for like 30 turns, the boss just never attacks. I have no idea why, but I'll take it. So we tank out these sorcerers until they're out of weapon uses, and then there aren't any sorcerers left on the map that can threaten us. As now 3 are silenced, 2 have no weapon uses left, there's no more reinforcements coming, and 1 is in the corner where Dean put him, and he stopped moving. He just gained Chapter 5 AI randomly, I guess, because his AI was definitely aggressive before. Now, another thing I didn't mention is that magic enemies that are silenced are also coded to run away. But I still want to steal their rewarp staff, so I open up a path assuming that they'd go to the regular enemy escape point in the left corner of the map. But unfortunately, they can also escape in the castle, and there go my rewarp staffs. Whatever, with the sorcerers dealt with, we just fly everyone to the exit. Chapter 17 was quite the experimental chapter. I start by half-heartedly distracting these enemy units so Leaf can visit this house. This causes a bunch of green units to spawn, and I gotta say, watching these red units actually get killed is incredibly satisfying. It's a rare scenario to find yourself in this run, so the satisfaction levels was off the charts. Once the green units kill a bunch of red units and tank out all the ballista uses, we warp Marty up here to distract Amolda, as we need her to not follow her Cavalier friends. These Cavaliers capture the green units and then leave, but we make sure to steal this rapier from one of the Cavs before they all leave, which will be important for later. The next step is to get these green units to not interfere with us, as when green units are killed, more green unit reinforcements will spawn, which is a big problem. To prevent this, I rescue as many as I can, put some of them up here, and put the rest down here. Then there is one green unit who captured a red unit, so I cannot rescue them and place them somewhere else. I successfully manipulate his AI to stand in front of the boss, and the boss kills him. Now, once the next green unit reinforcement spawns from that unit dying, we can rescue that green unit, and then no more green units will interfere, and no more green unit reinforcements will spawn. After all this setup, with no more red or green units to interfere with her, besides I guess this one Cavalier, it's finally time for me to Berserk Amolda. We rescue Marty so he can't be a distraction either, and thus Amolda eventually goes to attack the boss. The problem is, her Master Sword has such a bad hit rate, so we do something called a reverse heist, which basically allows you to give stuff to enemies, and give her the rapier, which is a lot more accurate. Sadly, she can't do much with the rapier either, and keep in mind, this boss has a broken weapon, which I broke before our fight with him began, but she still just can't kill him. It just wasn't working out, so I was actually considering going back to Chapter 15 to get the Armor Slayer, and maybe she'll have more luck with that. But the Armor Slayer is 12 weight, and so I'd have to manipulate the RNG again to give Lithis 2 more Constitution. But if I'm going to do that, I might as well just manipulate the RNG so Amolda kills the boss. Quite the conundrum, so at this point I said screw it, I need to try a different approach. So the next thing I wanted to try was something called the BBB, Berserk of Berserk to Berserk. What the heck is that, you may ask? Well, watch and see. The first thing I need is an A-rank staff user, which we have in one of these clerics. Sometimes. See, in this chapter, I found out that even enemy weapon ranks are randomized. Absolutely mind-blowing. But whatever. We'll get back to that cleric later. First, I need to get back up there. This time, I make much more of a concentrated effort to really distract these red units, as I am not going to be relying on the green units this time. Then, staying out of those red units' range, I get Leaf, Lithis, and Orson over to the left side of the map. Then I fly Orson up the cliff to tank out the ballista, and then make a checkpoint right after. Now before I continue, I need to explain how status staff AI in this game works. Enemies will always target the unit with the most HP with status staves. So before berserking the A-rank cleric, I make sure Lithis and Orson take damage, and didn't bring Marty to make sure that the boss is the unit with the most HP on the map. Then we berserk the A-rank cleric, trade the berserk staff to Dean and then fly over here, take the berserk staff with Lithis, and then give the berserk staff to that berserked cleric. The reason we do all this is that under normal circumstances, your units can't use status staves on bosses that are on gates and thrones. However, enemies don't have that restriction. They can use status staves on bosses on gates and thrones all day. Because the boss now has the most HP out of every unit on the map, the berserked cleric berserks the boss, who then proceeds to move off the gate and go attack something. Acting quickly, we rescue drop Leaf onto the gate, then we just need to survive one more enemy phase, and we win.
Alright, here we go. See how much damage these guys do to Dean. Oh, that's not bad at all. I'll be alright. Oh, Amalda! Let's see how good she is now since she's on the enemy side. What the heck are you doing? I agree. What the heck have you been doing? Wow! Wow! She sucks. Oh my god. Wow! Epic fail. Jeez. We did it! We finally did it! Oh my god! Finally! Get out of here.
I rejoice. And then I remember I forgot to steal back the Berserk staff from that cleric. So I do it all again, make sure to do that this time, and then seize. Before we get into it, just want to mention I use another stamina potion on Lithis here. 3 stamina potions left. Chapter 18 was the point where I felt like giving up. Now I start off with a fairly simple strategy. I warp Orson to cover the bottom left stairs, rewarp Sophia to cover the top left stairs, then I rescue Lithis so that I can warp him to be on the bottom right stairs. Then I open the right door, which causes the armors to leave the center room, and once the armors are far enough away from the center room, I berserk Xavier and he kills some soldiers. And after he kills some soldiers, the boss attacks Xavier. Now this round of combat is promising as Xavier does a lot of damage thanks to his Wrath skill, which guarantees he crits when he counterattacks. I thought I just lost because of the movement star, but no matter how many times I replayed this battle, Xavier just keeps losing this matchup. So I decided to try a different approach. Now, do not ask me how I trapped all these enemies in this room because I honestly don't remember. We also silenced one of the Fenrir sorcerers, and speaking of them, this was all set up for us to use one of those Fenrir sorcerers to kill the boss. My idea was to guide the Fenrir mage to a specific part of the map, berserk him, and then make it so only the boss is in range of him so it'll attack the boss, doing the ton of damage. However, it's here that I discover something that was massively disappointing. See, the way I thought it would work is as long as I stay in range for the sorcerer to use Jormungand, he would use Jormungand over Fenrir, and I would be able to guide him around that way. But unfortunately, the Fenrir sorcerer defaults to using Fenrir regardless if you are in his Jormungand range or not, which completely ruined my plan. So he wastes all his Fenrir uses, and now it's back to the drawing board. Next, I try to do a BBB. We find some A-rank staff users, which are these rewarp sorcerers who come as reinforcements from the bottom right stairs. We give this berserk sorcerer the berserk staff, but for some reason, despite the boss having the most HP on the map, this berserk sorcerer simply will not berserk the boss. I have no idea why, he just won't. Now, I know there's a video where someone tries to save everyone in the game, and in the video, someone managed to get their own unit berserk to berserk the boss. But there's a couple problems with me doing that strategy. For one thing, Sophia is the staff user with the highest HP. She had, I think, like 15 HP, so getting everyone to be below that HP threshold is more complex than you would think. And even if I managed to do that, in the video, there were no enemies left on the map except the boss. Whereas here, I can't get rid of the enemies. So there's still no guarantee that she'd even berserk the boss. And finally, even if everything goes perfect and she berserks the boss, in the video, it's clear that in the English version of this game, the boss doesn't leave the throne anyway. So the BBB strategy is a bust for this map. So I go back to try and do the thing with the Fenrir sorcerer again. I start by opening the door to the right of the armors with Dean, then rescue Dean with Marty and use the rescue staff on Marty. Due to a rewarp when Sophia was on the left side and another rescue earlier on, there are now no units on the right side, which means the armors will stay put. Except for when I berserk Xavier to get him killed out and all the way. They'll kill him, but then stay put. Then we warp Marty into the room with the villagers and open the door. Ralph and Orson are used to distract some of the armors while I gather the villagers, and then I use those villagers to get the armors to run away. Once enough armors on the left are in their running away state, we open the left door, causing the center armors to start moving towards us, which is exactly what we want. Then, once we guide all the armors over here with no villager units left, and the Fenrir sorcerer moves over here, we berserk the sorcerer. The reason we do this now is with this setup, I'm in a situation where the absolute minimum amount of enemies that the sorcerer can target are those soldiers, as all units on the map, enemy or otherwise, are outside of his Fenrir range. And without any other targets, the sorcerer will target the boss with Fenrir. Now, I couldn't figure out how to get the soldiers out of there, so I accept he'll have to waste some Fenrir uses on some of these soldiers, but eventually he does use Fenrir on the boss, and it gets blocked by Great Shield. He uses it again, and the boss dodges. And just to add insult to injury, the boss dodges the Jormungand as well. At this point, I was ready to give up. I was fed up. This seemed impossible. I put the game down, went to sleep that night. Then, it came to me in a dream. Sure, Xavier isn't winning the fight against the boss if we just leave things the way they are. But what if we were to rig the fight in Xavier's favor? The next day, I put my 5-step plan into action. Step 1 is setup. Promote Marty, rewarp Sepia to cover these stairs, open this door with Ralph, rescue staff promoted Marty over to the left side, get this Javelin Soldier to attack Leaf through the wall, then move to this spot right across from the stairs with Leaf so that the Javelin Soldier moves onto those stairs to attack Leaf, and as long as we leave Leaf there, the Javelin Soldier will continue to block those stairs, preventing the annoying rewarp sorcerer reinforcements from spawning. And finally, open the right door next to the center room of armors. Before I get to step 2, the reason we opened that first door is that all the enemies try and get through to attack Ralph from that one choke point, but they're blocked off from the front armor, so they will just stand there for the rest of the map. This even applies to the soldier reinforcements coming from the bottom left stairs. We do have to do this, otherwise the enemies will go for Sophia, which is not good, but Ralph has plenty of vulneraries, a scroll, and is only being attacked by one enemy, so he'll be fine. Step 2 is guiding all of the armors over here so the center room is clear. Similar situation to Ralph, they all want to attack Orson, but are blocked from moving forward, so they'll just stand there. And Orson has plenty of vulneraries and a scroll. Step 3 is baiting Xavier from the boss. Now, I had a sneaking suspicion that Xavier had Chapter 5 AI. Not sure why I thought that, I just felt it may be a possibility. So I tested out here by baiting Xavier over here and rescue staffing Marty away, and sure enough, Xavier does not move from that spot now. Brilliant! Step 4 is tanking out all 30 hits from the boss. Marty is stacked with Vulns and a scroll and ready to tank. So we tank out 10 uses of Thoron and 20 uses of the Master Lance. Once the boss is out of uses, it's finally time for Step 5. We Berserk Xavier, who then proceeds to capture this random soldier, nerfing his stats and destroying our plan, but no big deal. We do it all again, and this time Xavier doesn't capture. He approaches the boss and their battle begins. Now, Xavier will not attack the boss since he does 0 damage, but the boss, even with a broken weapon, still does damage to Xavier, causing Xavier's devastating wrathful counterattacks. If he can land a hit, that is. What's also annoying is due to the soldiers having random AI, sometimes they will wander over to the center room, and then Xavier will switch to the killer bow to kill them, and isn't smart enough to switch back to the Master Axe. So to get him to switch back before the boss heals all his HP, we need to place Marty in range of him. Xavier attacks Marty with the Master Axe, and his fight with the boss can resume. Another major problem is, believe it or not, even with a frickin' broken weapon, the boss can still crit Xavier. I didn't even know critting with a broken weapon was even possible. Eventually, I do get the boss to low HP, but then for whatever reason, Xavier actually does attack the boss with the killer bow. I have absolutely no idea why, maybe because he calculated that a crit with a killer bow would finish him, but all this does is make it so I have to put Marty in range of him again and waste more time. And even worse, Gustav uses his vulnerary to heal, undoing all the progress Xavier made. With all of these factors combined, the boss eventually does kill Xavier. But while I lost this battle, the war is not over. This loss only invigorated me, as I knew now that this was more than possible, and I had a plan to ensure Xavier's victory the next time. Next attempt, I do basically the exact same thing, except with 3 changes. I rescue Lithis with Marty and rescue staff both of them over to the left. Then I reverse heist a scroll onto Xavier to make sure he can't get crit. Then rescue Lithis with Marty and rescue staff both of them out of there. Then I steal the boss's vulnerary. Now the question was, would these 3 changes make a difference? Well, the battle between Xavier and the boss rages on, and eventually, after an extremely long time, this happens.
Oh my god! Oh, it's over! It's over! Oh my god, I'm done! I did it! I finally did it! Yes! Yes!
Now, we aren't quite done yet. See, I could just rescue Leaf and warp him to the throne, but I wanted to save a warp use, so we just need to get past Xavier. Luckily, Xavier is baited over here, then here, and we sneak past him no problem, rescue staff Leaf, and finally seize that damn throne. Before I get into it, I just want to mention that I used a hammer on the rescue staff last chapter, and I use another one here on the Berserk staff. There are 2 hammer uses left. Anyway, you would think chapter 19 would be a nice break, but no. Long story short, the enemies are too fast for my units to escape. No matter what I did, they would always catch up and kill my units. So what I end up doing is rescuing Linoan with Orson, then rescue staffing Orson, and accepting that it's impossible for Dean to escape, so I just let him die. And Hicks also gets very close to dying, but I get a lucky 78% dodge with him. After that, everyone except Dean is able to escape. Thankfully, Chapter 20 is the lucky break we were looking for. We do one kind of cool transfer chain here to get Linoan to safety, Berserk the boss, who while only takes chip damage eventually gets taken down, and then tank out these armors with Lithus, who happen to get a Constitution level up, and all of these armors roll 12 Con or less, so the Lithus can't be captured. Then we tank out the rest of the enemies here, we promote Havon, and we restock on Vulnaries before the chapter ends. Before we get into it, I just want to mention that I do use another stamina potion on Lithus here. 2 stamina potions left. I'll be honest, I had absolutely no idea what I could do to beat this chapter. There was no A-rank staff users to pull off a BBB, and the only enemy that I could see that could kill the boss was that Draco Knight mini-boss. However, even if I steal the sleep staff from that cleric and put all the ballistas that can one-shot him to sleep, the Draco Knight mini-boss can be taken out by his own squad all by themselves. So there's absolutely no chance that I can use him to defeat the boss. So I thought for a while, and eventually I came up with an idea. But first, we need to get past the enemies. I start by rescuing Ralph with Glade, and then with Sarah, I use Silence on the Sleep Staff Cleric, which serves the dual purpose of getting rid of the Sleep Staff user, but also getting Sarah to A rank in staves, which I needed since Sophia is fatigued for this chapter. Then I warp Glade over to those forts, and Glade drops Ralph. This will block the soldier reinforcements from spawning. I still berserk the mini-boss and get him killed, but this time it's specifically so the Draco Knight grunts run away so I can get past them. I also silence this mage for reasons I'll explain later. I guide these Armor Knights over here using Hicks, and this Armor Knight over here with Marty so I can sneak past with Marty and place him on the choke point right here. Meanwhile, the Sorcerer reinforcements start rewarping in, which is exactly what I want since I want those rewarp staves. I silence one of them to make it so that when Lithus steals the rewarp staff, he has more of a chance to survive, and I get the Silver Sword from this village, which will be important later. A bunch of Cavalier reinforcements come from the right side, but I block this choke point with Marty so none of them can get through. I then steal this other rewarp staff and silence that sorcerer as well, then I steal one more rewarp staff. Meanwhile, Marty's tanking just got a whole lot easier, as this bow cavalier really dumbly stops in front of Marty, and the other cavalier in front of Marty can't even damage him, so the rest of the cavaliers just wander around aimlessly for the rest of the map. And instead of silencing that last sorcerer, I decide to just run him out of Jormungand uses with Sarah. After all that comes the boring part. I have to slowly tank out all these ballista uses as well as the boss's Blizzard Tome. Quite tedious, but it will be necessary for a reason you will see shortly. Our next step is to guide these armors in the boss's little area next to the castle out of that area. I want them to be as far away from the boss's castle as possible. It will be very important for a reason you will see in a moment. It takes a bit, but once those armors are far enough away from the boss, it's time to enact the next phase of our plan. I steal the Tornado Tome from the boss so the boss is unable to attack. Then I bring this armor over here close to the boss. We chose this armor since it has the highest strength and skill out of all the armors. Then I trade Lithus the Killing Edge and reverse heist it onto that armor, and then rescue Lithus so he doesn't get captured. And I do the same thing with the Silver Sword. Finally, after all this painstaking setup is over, I berserk the armor. With no one in the armor's way either to hurt him or impede his path, nothing stops him from beginning to attack the boss. As I predicted, the armor didn't even bother attacking with the Great Sword due to its low hit, but even the Silver Sword was surprisingly insufficient. Though when the armor switches to the Killing Edge, that's when things start to get moving. Also, credit to this armor for having a higher IQ than Xavier for knowing how to actually switch his weapons. Even so, it still takes an excruciatingly painful amount of time, as despite the armor having a better hit rate with the Killing Edge, the hit rate is still insanely low thanks to the gate bonuses. But eventually, and I mean eventually, this happens. I did it! Finally! Oh my god, finally! That took so long. It's over. Thank God. Holy crap.
Get out of here.
But I'm not done yet. I still need to get Leaf past that armor. I place Leaf here, which is outside of the armor's range, and then I seize. Now, I had gotten quite a lot of characters captured, so Chapter 21X was my opportunity to get some of them back. Fun fact, I've never legitimately played this chapter. I would always just leave. But I'm in a situation where I need fodder, so I was determined to rescue as many characters as I could. My secondary goal is to get as many warp staves as possible. I first try and warp Lithis in this bottom room to steal those clerics' warp staves. This ends up being a bad idea as all of the enemies in the center room get warped into that bottom room, and I end up being surrounded even more than with just the mages surrounding me. So double surrounded, which means I would not be able to steal a second warp staff, which is not ideal. So the bottom room is a bust, but what about the warp staves in the center room? Well, I did figure something out, but it requires a little bit of sacrifice. The right side is the usual. I move all my scrubs to the corner to stay at a siege tome range, but on the left side, I just leave my fodder as is, which causes the siege tome users to attack them. And they make this shape when they do so. We then warp Lithis in between all the warp users to steal a warp, and now Lithis just needs to survive enemy phase. None of those heroes can capture Lithis because they'll choose to attack from a distance due to them always moving before the siege tome users and the boss. And the boss cannot capture Lithis, and the siege tome users don't have the constitution to capture him either. And I know this looks extremely dangerous, but trust me, all of these guys have absolutely terrible hit rates on Lithis, except for the boss. So Lithis has a very good chance of surviving this. Then, once I survive, I steal a second warp and rescue staff Lithis out of there. Then to save as many units as possible, I rescue these 2 units, use my last 2 hammer uses to repair the rescue staff and the berserk staff, use the rescue staff on these 2 groups of 2 units, and escape, finishing the chapter. Except, I realize I needed 2 rescue uses and I only had 1 left for Chapter 22. I'll get into why once I start talking about Chapter 22, but for now, I go back to Chapter 21X and do the same thing, this time only rescuing 1 group of 2 units. Then I finally finish the chapter. Except, I wasn't satisfied with this. I felt I could save more units. So I do all of that stuff again for a 3rd time, and this time I make a checkpoint after, because I really didn't want Lithis to go through the whole shebang again. After that, I put my Operation Save Some More Characters plan into action. I first start by tanking out all the Siege Tome uses with the fodder I definitely am not going to be able to save. Then I bait these armors to move here so that there's an opening. Then I make a second checkpoint, because this is the part where things become very experimental and trial and error. As soon as you open the door and go into the prison, both the center room and bottom room just warp a bajillion enemies at you all at the same time, and some, especially those heroes, can just insta-capture your units. I'll be honest, I had absolutely no idea how to deal with this situation. I was just trying completely random things and seeing what worked. And over and over and over and over again, these enemies would just continue to kill or capture my unit trying to escape in multiple different ways. It seemed pretty hopeless. But then, eventually, I have no idea why, but I put Orson on this tile right here. And for some bizarre, insane reason, that causes the enemy AI to completely and utterly fail and warp everyone into this corner, where they are blocked from doing anything thanks to this armor being right here. I have absolutely no idea at all why the enemies just randomly decided to warp these units in this corner from me specifically placing Orson here, but not going to lie, it is extremely hilarious. I then use Orson to open the door to free my units and place Hoblon where Orson was to block off the units. More reinforcements spawn, but the enemies are still obsessed with warping them in this corner, which makes it easy to block enemies off with Orson and escape with everyone on the right side. On the left side, we only have to use 1 rescue staff use to rescue a group of 2, and then we escape the map netting 2 warp staves, 5 scrubs, and still having 2 rescue staff uses left. Chapter 22 turned out to be a lot more complex than I thought. Now, the reason I wanted 2 rescue staff uses was that so Lithis can steal the sleep staff, then I can rescue him. This causes Sias to go away, so I can have Lithis steal the berserk staff from the boss, and then rescue Lithis again. The problem is, I only get 1 berserk use out of this, and I wanted to have 2 uses of berserk instead of 1, even if that meant giving up on getting the sleep staff. So I decided to change things up. I start by warping one of our scrubs over here, and then moving the scrub right here. This causes Sias to leave, allowing me to steal the berserk staff, which now has 2 uses instead of 1. I use one of those Berserk uses on this ballista for two main reasons. For one thing, that ballista can easily kill Berserked Reinhardt, but another reason is actually why we want this ballista berserked instead of asleep. Because even if Reinhardt survives, he would consistently ride south to kill this ballista, and then would ride to the left from there away from the boss. But thanks to me berserking that ballista, it gets killed off before it has any chance of distracting Berserked Reinhardt, meaning Berserked Reinhardt will no longer ride south. And speaking of Reinhardt, I did kind of spoil it, but yes, I did berserk him. And with that ballista out of the way, he is able to kill all the enemies thanks to a combination of Vantage and his Dire Thunder, which doubles all the enemies. After that, Reinhardt rides north and easily kills the boss. He then rides down here and gets killed, getting rid of all of the remaining leadership stars on the map. But we aren't done yet. This is our last chance to get some door keys before the final chapter, so I go on a little expedition to get to the shop. I bait this sniper to attack Orson over here, and then over to this corner. Now this sniper has Chapter 5 AI, so it won't move from that spot as long as we don't go into his range, which will be important later. For this hero, I use Orson to bait this guy to come back all the way to the beginning of the map, then I steal his weapon, and to make sure he doesn't run to buy another one at the shop, I surround him. Then we tank out the ballistas, trap this sniper in the corner right here, tank out the siege tomes, and after that, we are safe to go shopping and buy some door keys. We also restock on vulneraries by stealing them from these soldiers. After all that, with the ballistas dead, it is safe to fly Leaf over to the gate with Karine. We get the Warp Staff with Lenoan, who now has A rank in staves, Warp Alba to get the Rescue Staff, and then seize. Chapter 23 is absolutely hysterical. Fun fact, I have never once legitimately played this chapter. I always just skip over it in one way or another. But would the strict restrictions of this challenge finally force me to engage with the map design of this chapter? Well, let's find out. So I start by warping one of my scrubs over to the castle area, then I rescue Leaf with Ida and bring Karine over as well. By warping my scrub over there, this causes Zed to appear, and with the help of the gate bonuses and Forsetti, he absolutely decimates all of the enemies. After that, I drop Leaf next to the castle, take all of Sias's stuff and then rescue him. Next enemy phase, Leaf gets poisoned by a poison ballista. Next player phase, I talk to Zed with Leaf turning him blue. Then I surround Leaf so he cannot be captured. Next enemy phase, this happens.
Ah, damn. That might be GG. Alright. Rip Leaf. See ya. Oh! I think I'm still dead. I forget. Is the most poison damage can do 4 points or 3? I really don't remember. Oh! Let's go!
What a clutch way to not play the chapter. Chapter 24 is all about preparation for the endgame. The first thing I tried doing is completing the objective needed to go to Chapter 24X, as the Kaya staff can only be helpful in the final chapter. But this ends up failing multiple times, as once those sorcerers capture the villagers, I have no way of killing the sorcerers without majorly wasting Berserk staff resources. So eventually, I give up on trying to go to Chapter 24X. Now, one notable thing about the sorcerers in the right room is that their AI is very smart. The Instorkle staff users make it so it's more difficult to use status staves on them, and the Restore staff user restores them when afflicted with status staves. All things that will make it more difficult to get all those status staves from those sorcerers. Difficult, but not impossible. I start by warping Lithis into the sorcerer room. Then, the first staff I steal is the Restore staff to prevent these sorcerers from being restored. Then I silence the Helltome user, who brings units to 1 HP if it hits, the Berserk staff user, and the Sleep staff user. The Silent Staff Sorcerer doesn't have enough magic to silence any of my staff users unless I get super unlucky with the Ensorkle Sorcerer encircling him. The only enemy Lithis has to deal with is the Fenrir user, who Lithis can handle. These mages right here are also quite smart, using Pure Waters making them harder to be silenced. And they need to be silenced since they have Restore staves, and we'll use them to restore enemy units in their range, including the boss, which will be a major problem later. But thankfully, even with those Pure Waters, they don't have enough magic to avoid being silenced. Meanwhile, Marty is used to block off these sorcerers from getting to a couple of my units. Next staff I steal is the Silent Staff. Then I rewarp Sarah into the room both to keep Lithis healed up, and to serve as a second inventory for all the status staffs we're stealing, which serves to be helpful immediately. Next staff I steal is the Rescue Staff. Then I steal the Encircle Staff. Then I rewarp Zed into the Sorcerer's Room to serve as a third inventory space for Lithis. Next, I steal the Sleep Staff, and to prevent Lithis from getting insta-captured from that hero, I use the Sleep Staff to put that hero to sleep. Finally, I steal the Berserk Staff. And now that I have all the staves we need for Endgame, it's finally time to actually beat the chapter. I warp Lithis over to the boss, rewarp Set over here, then I reverse heist the boss in Iron Bow. Then I rescue Lithis. What all of this does is cause the boss to switch to an Iron Bow, which is important since his sword gives him so much magic that he's invulnerable to status staves. But now that he unequipped that sword by switching to the bow, that magic boost goes away, making him vulnerable to status staves. Then to get rid of the thrown invulnerability to status staves, I perform a BBB. I rescue Lithis back into the sorcerer room, then I reverse heist the Berserk staff onto this sorcerer, and then berserk that sorcerer. This causes that sorcerer to berserk the unit that has the most HP, which is the boss. Then I steal the Berserk staff back. The boss gets epically and hilariously absolutely destroyed by Galzus thanks to Galzus proccing Astra. Then I warp Leaf the Seas. Now, I know I wasn't able to go to Chapter 24X, but what if I was able to? Well, before we get to the finale, it's finally time to get into all of that. What I mean by that is I made a separate set of saves specifically to go to all the chapters we skipped to see if they would be possible under these challenge restrictions. Starting off, we have Chapter 8X. Now, Chapter 8X has a boss that I cannot get past without killing or capturing, so I cannot beat the chapter without weapons. But, can I get past the enemies? Indeed I can. The way we do it is we warp past all the enemies. Now, am I being a bit of a cheeky asshole here? Well, yes. But in my defense, this chapter is made up of one tile-wide corridor, so good luck getting past the enemies without warping. I'm pretty sure it's impossible. Chapter 11X is actually the easiest chapter by far in the context of this entire challenge. I just wait until after turn 30, and then the boss gives up. Then I warp Leaf the Seas. If you wanted to do this chapter in this challenge without warping, good luck. Pretty sure it's impossible since the chapter is just made up of 1 to 2 tile-wide corridors. For Chapter 14X, you are required to bring at least 7 units. So I bring 3 units that are easy to carry, 3 flyers, and 1 fodder unit. This chapter is just a lot of trial and error in figuring out where to fly with your flying units. I die multiple times to many things over and over again, such as this hero boss, the Pegasus Knights, the Fenrir boss, the hero boss again, the Jormungand sorcerer, the Jormungand sorcerer again, and the Jormungand sorcerer for a 3rd time. Yeah, I died a lot to the Jormungand sorcerers. You get the idea, but eventually, I did figure out a relatively consistent strategy on exactly where to fly with my flyers in order to beat the chapter. I fly everyone to this spot, Karin gets attacked but she survives, then I fly my 3 flyers over to these spots, Ida gets attacked by a Jormungand sorcerer but survives, and Dean gets attacked but he dodges, Ida then dodges the Pegasus Knight, and so does Dean. Then I escape with Ida, I escape with Dean, and I move Karin to this spot where she dodges a Jormungand Mage and Pegasus Knight, then she gets hit by a Pegasus Knight but is able to dodge the last one that attacks her. Then I escape with Karin, ending the map. For Chapter 16A, we cannot get past the boss without killing or capturing him, so we cannot beat the chapter. But we can still get past the enemies by warping past them. Similar situation with Chapter 17A. Can't get past the boss, but we can warp past the enemies. For both 16A and 17A, it may be possible to get past the enemies without warping considering how much open space there is, but honestly, these chapters are hard enough just playing them normally without restrictions, so I was lazy and didn't even bother trying. Chapter 24X. A chapter already notorious for being one of the most frustrating and unfair Fire Emblem chapters of all time. And that's when playing it normally. Would we even be able to get anywhere without weapons? Well, let's find out. I start by rewarping my staff users to Abel's room, a safe place where they can do all of their staff business. Now, after rescuing and warping a bunch of units into the center room, a huge problem I found is as soon as you enter that room, all of the enemies get warped or rewarped to that room, overcrowding it and making it impossible to get to the escape point. The way I got around this is by using my other units to distract those enemies being warped and rewarping, and as long as my other units are able to survive, no enemies will rewarp or warp to the center room, so I'll only have to deal with the 6 sorcerers in the room. I also berserked the boss so that he would leave the escape tile, or at least get killed, but the problem is, berserked enemies move last, and if the boss gets hit by Jormungand, he gets poisoned, which overrides the berserk status, which means he will not move or get killed for that turn, which is a huge problem. So I have to berserk the boss again to fix this, but the problem is this just kept happening. The berserk status kept getting overwritten. And even when the boss did eventually die, another one of those sorcerers would take its place on the escape tile. This eventually led to my units distracting all of those other units to die, and with all the distractions eliminated, all the enemy units would go back into warping and rewarping into the center room. What I ultimately end up doing is, after rescuing Leaf with Brighton and rescue staffing Brighton, using the Kaya staff on Abel and recruiting her, I rescue Abel with Brighton, and then warp them to the center room. I also rewarp Sed to the center room as well. Then I found the sorcerer with 9 constitution and put him to sleep so he couldn't capture any of my units in that room, and then berserk the boss. One of the sorcerers got a lucky crit on the boss. Meanwhile, my other units once again distract all the enemies from rewarping or warping to that center room. Then one of the Fenrir sorcerers unfortunately moves to block that escape point, so I berserk both Fenrir users, hoping they get killed off. Unfortunately, the berserked Fenrir sorcerer blocking the escape tile gets poisoned, which is not great since I was only down to 1 unit left to distract the enemies, so I needed to finish the map soon. So I berserk the Fenrir sorcerer again, the Fenrir berserk sorcerer gets Fenrir'd, and thanks to my careful positioning of Abel and Sed, the other sorcerers can only attack Sed and Abel from 1 to 2 range, meaning wherever they decide to attack, they won't be blocking the escape tile. With the escape tile open, we warp Leaf to escape. So technically, this chapter is possible to beat weaponless, but in terms of escaping with all the units you brought in so that the game would still be possible to beat after you beat it, well, I'm not sure. There's definitely a lot more I could have tried, especially covering up all those reinforcement spawn points. But for now, I must be content that, at the very least, Chapter 24X is technically possible to do weaponless. And last, but most important, we have Chapter 12X. Now, if we are just talking about beating the chapter, it's very easy. Just warp Lithis to the throne room, talk to Pern, move Pern off the throne, then warp Leaf. But that is not what I care about. I want to see if it's possible under the conditions of this run to recruit Tina. So remember how I said us losing Laura had massive ramifications in gating us out of 12X? Well, here's where all of that comes to fruition. But those implications will not matter if we cannot recruit Tina. Because here's the thing. To recruit Tina, you must talk to her with Sophia. And it is impossible to have a rewarp staff at this point in the game, and you can't do a warp rescue staff strat, as the only other staff user besides Sophia you could have up until this point is Nana. And I established earlier that it is most likely impossible to recruit Nana on this type of run. So, we have to get through the fortress normally to recruit Tina. But is that even possible? At first, you'd think it wouldn't be possible since, like 8X and 11X, this chapter is made up of mostly 1-tile wide corridors. But here's the thing. Lithis, when promoted, has 7 constitution at base. So there's no constitution level ups required at all for Lithis, because 7 constitution is enough to help us get through this chapter. So, let's get into it and see if it's possible. For these thieves right here, we can steal their slim swords, which have 3 weight, causing them to flee. Then, to prevent Lithis from being captured by the thieves, I rescue him with Orson, move back, then move Orson out of the way, steal the weapon, and then alternate, rescuing Lithis with Halvan this time. Then I rinse and repeat that until all the thieves have escaped. The next obstacle we face is Trude. Trude has a silver sword, which has a weight of 8, so I cannot steal it. Now, there probably is a way to guide him to a corner and trap him there, but I was lazy and got him out of the way by sacrificing Macha to be captured by him. Then my last obstacle is these cell swords. I block them off with Orson, then move Orson back, then we steal the iron sword with Lithis. The iron sword has 6 weight, so promoted Lithis will no matter what have enough constitution to steal it. Then I rescue Lithis with Halvan, so Lithis doesn't get captured. This does push me back relatively far, but as long as I am careful where I move, I won't get boxed in. Once I finish stealing all the iron swords, nothing stands in my way of getting to the throne room, so I get there and recruit Tina. So now that we know it's possible to recruit Tina, why is she so important? Well, she has the Thief Staff, which lets her steal almost anything from enemies. That includes bosses, as long as her magic stat is higher than the enemy. This means that with Tina, I no longer need to use Lithis to steal that Berserk staff in Chapter 16b. Nor do we have to RNG abuse to get Tina to have enough magic to steal the Berserk staff. See, Tina has 3 base magic. When you promote her, she gains another 3 magic, bringing it to 6. With an Ensorkle, that adds 7 more magic, bringing her to 13, which is higher than the boss, who has 12 magic. Meaning on turn 1, base Tina will be able to steal the Berserk staff. What all this ultimately means is that I would not have to RNG abuse to get Lithis to have more constitution if I had Tina. Now, the one flaw of all this is while you will be able to do BBBs after Chapter 18, due to Pern and the Body Ring bringing him to 11 Constitution, which is enough to pass around the Berserk Staff to enemies, you won't be able to do this in Chapter 17. But I'm sure there are other reliable strategies you can use in Chapter 17 that don't require RNG abuse. In fact, one idea just off the top of my head is doing a BSS instead of a BBB in Chapter 17. All of this shows that as long as you keep Laura alive, there is no need to RNG abuse at all on this run. Before I get into it, just want to mention I used my last 2 stamina potions on Sarah and Sophia. Finally, we've arrived. The Endgame. This is the chapter I was the most excited for, but also was the most nervous about. Excited because it was finally time to unload all my status staves, and I was going to be able to do some fun things with all of them. But nervous because I wasn't going to be able to kill anyone, including those really powerful mini-bosses, and I had no defense against Veld's stone. I genuinely was concerned that this would be impossible, and my run would cease so close to the end. So, was I able to do it? Let's get into it. I start by silencing 3 of the Fenrir sorcerers so I don't have to deal with their long-range Fenrir. I do have to encircle Sarah to silence one of those sorcerers thanks to their boosted magic from the magic tiles, but after being encircled, Sarah can silence them no problem. Then I rewarp Sed over to Sophia and encircle Sed. Then I cover all the reinforcement spawn points. Macha dies. We purposely get Marty damaged so he doesn't have the most HP on the map. Orson also gets Berserk, which is not ideal since it's a waste of a Berserk use, but at the very least, he was the only other unit that had higher HP than a lot of the other units I wanted Berserked. And speaking of that, it's time for the BBB. I warp Sed onto the magic tiles, and thanks to the encircle, Sed now has enough magic to Berserk Canis. Then I rescue Sed to safety. Canis easily kills the armors in her room, and then Berserks Bovis. Bovis absolutely destroys all the enemies in his room. Tanya then gets killed. Canis then berserks a random berserker, which is not very helpful. For the remaining Fenrir sorcerers, we tank out one with Lithis and the other one with Halban. And since Bovis killed the other one, that's all the Fenrir's gone. So all that's left is to wait 64 turns, and part 1 of this chapter has been completed. After I wait out the reinforcements, I make a checkpoint, which I think is more than fair. Next, I berserk Porcus, who opens the door. Then I bait Porcus to come over here, which allows us to alley-oop him with Ralph, so Ralph can stand on one of those 6 special tiles. But I get blocked off by this unarmed bow armor. I bait that bow armor to come out of the room, and bait him and Porcus to come around this corner. I then bait Porcus to come over here, allowing us to sneak past and block him off. The bow armor doesn't block us this time, and Porcus moves to the right. Thus, we can finally place Ralph on that top left special tile. 5 left. Porcus then hilariously opens Bovis's door, and he gets absolutely destroyed. Bovis leaves his room, and we put him to sleep, allowing me to place Brighton on the top center special tile. 4 left. While all that is going on, I execute my plan to get to the bottom left special tile. I open this door with Karine, expecting her to be sacrificed and captured by one of those armors, getting them out of the way. But it's here I realize that units cannot be captured on this map. Which kind of makes sense since it's the final map. Karine does still get sacrificed though, which causes the enemies to finally leave the room. Except for Draco, who I bait off this special tile to attack Marty. And thanks to Marty's high defense and scrolls, she can't do much to him. Then we put her to sleep, and then rewarp Sarah onto that bottom left special tile. 3 left. While all that's going on, I execute phase 1 of getting to that bottom right special tile. I tank out all the Master Bow uses from this bow armor with Orson. Once he runs out of uses, I finally berserk Tigris. Now that one of the Master Bow users broke their weapon, Tigris has no chance of dying to them, which, surprisingly, with both of them attacking him, does happen sometimes. So Tigris massacres everyone in that room. While all that's going on, I bait this sorcerer to follow Marty and guide that sorcerer into the bottom left room, where with the magic tiles, Marty can easily tank him out. This allowed me to successfully tank out all of the Hell and Jormungand uses from this sorcerer, but since enemies can't capture on this map, this also means that there's no escape point for the enemies. Which means that the normal circumstances that cause enemies to run away, such as running out of weapon uses, no longer apply. So for some reason, what the AI decides to do instead is attempt to box us in. Like in this situation, this sorcerer actually doesn't have to do anything to block us off. He doesn't even have to move. Thus, he just stands here for the rest of the map to block off Marty and Sarah from leaving the room. Now Sarah has rewarp, but I couldn't afford to use a warp or rescue staff to save Marty. So he's basically stuck there, which really sucks because he's one of my best units. But where the lack of an enemy escape point really causes a massive problem is with these 2 armors. I steal their weapons with Lithis, which turned out to be a massive mistake. As because I stole their weapons, they can't be baited to attack me, and thus manipulated to move to different places anymore because they can't attack. Nor can they run away due to the lack of an enemy escape point. Thus, these armors really do everything they can to box me in. They push me into this corner and block the path for me to move out of that area. Now, any other chapter, I'd be stuck there and this would be game over. But luckily, I actually have the staves to deal with this situation for once. I rescue Leaf with Alba, then rescue Lithis with Orson, then warp Alba past the armors, then warp Orson past the armors, and we made sure to warp them to these specific tiles, as now, instead of the armors blocking us off, I am blocking them off from having the ability to block me off. Then I rewarp Sophia and rescue Staff Linoan over to the left side, so they won't be blocked off by the armors anymore either. After that, I rewarp Sed over to the other side to help out there, and also to trade Lithis our very last Berserk staff use, which will be important later. After that, I execute my plan to get the special tile in the bottom center room. I open the bottom center door with Orson. Now, these armors in the center bottom room with those master axes are very dangerous. They may serve to be an issue, but for now, I'm able to guide them over here with Orson. Then I use Lithis to bait out Mus and guide Mus over here with Alba, and Mus proceeds to kill Alba. Then we rewarp Sed onto that bottom center tile. 2 left. Unfortunately, Sed gets hit by Hell, and I have no uses of Physic or Fortify left, nor does Sed have any vulnaries, so he is in huge danger. I didn't have a backup plan. Sed either needed to dodge, or it's all over. I cross my fingers, and luckily, he's able to dodge that 42% hit. While all that's going on, I execute phase 2 of getting to that bottom right special tile. I open the bottom right door with Glade. Glade instantly gets annihilated by Tigress. Now, when I opened Tigress's door, I timed it so that Mus would be in the right position so that they both would fight each other. Mus has Chapter 5 AI, so he won't move unless someone gets in his range. So he stays put as Tigress moves closer. The plan worked, and Mus fights Tigress, which distracts Tigress's aggressive AI from going towards us. Then I rewarp Sarah to that bottom right special tile, and have Marty occupy the bottom left special tile. Only 1 left. While all that's going on, I open the top right door with Hicks, and Canis is able to instantly kill both Hicks and Ida. Now that Canis is out of the room, I rescue Lithis over to the left side and warp Lithis to that top right special tile. And now, that's all special tiles covered. We also rescue Halvan to safety so that Canis will now go towards Lithis. With all the special tiles covered, Lithis and Sed just need to survive this enemy phase, and then the doors to the final boss is opened. Sed dodges another 42% hit, and Canis can't do enough damage to kill Lithis. The door to the throne has now been opened. After that, we use our second to last vulnerary on Sed. Now there's only 1 vulnerary left, 1 last chance to heal. Other than that, we're out of heal staves, out of fortifies, out of physics. It was truly do or die now. Next enemy phase, one of these sorcerers goes to silence Sophia, but to be honest, I'm not even sure what happens here. Apparently she dodges the first one, but I could have sworn there's like a miss animation that comes with dodging. Did the game glitch out? I'm not really sure, to be honest. Though the second one, after the sorcerer's encircle, does end up hitting her. Still, I thank Naga, as if Sophia got hit by that first silence, Linoan probably would have been silenced too, and then I'd have no way to rescue Staff Lithis, who I forgot to rescue Staff last turn. Also, Lithis dodges this 96% chance, which is absolutely insane. He would have survived anyway, but still, I thought it was pretty cool. Now, it's time for the final BBB. I reverse heist Canis our final Berserk Staff, and then rescue Staff Lithis away. Next enemy phase, Linoan gets silenced, which means we actually have no way to warp Leaf to the throne since Sarah's on the other side and has no more rewarp staff uses. On the plus side, Tigress does finally get killed off by Mus, and on the even pluser side, despite this Encircle sorcerer trying to prevent this from happening, Veld, who has the most HP on the map, gets berserked. And all hell breaks loose as Veld's own troops start to attack him, and he also attacks his own troops. The final boss himself has lost control. This is huge, but we're still kinda screwed since we don't have a way to warp Leaf to the throne. But I decide, screw it, let's go for it anyway. I move Leaf in front of this armor and rescue him with Orson. I move Sed up, making sure he stays out of Mus's range. Next enemy phase, as the mutiny continues, Halvan unfortunately dies to one of the Master Axe armors. Rest in peace, Halvan. You served this run remarkably well. Orson also gets hit by Jormungand and will now start being chased down by these 2 armors and this sorcerer. Meanwhile, Veld, who is tired of being seen as a joke by the Fire Emblem community, decides to step it up and absolutely decimates all of his sorcerer troops. He then moves off the throne to keep demolishing his own troops. And Berserk Alf is on her way over to us as well, and she absolutely wrecks Bovis. She is extremely dangerous, so our time is running out to finish the map before she gets to us. At this point, I decide to throw everything against the wall. Since Linoan and Sophia can no longer use staves, I decided to use them as meat shields instead, and put them in range of that sorcerer and those 2 armors to distract them. I also throw Zed in all of these enemies' ranges because the time for caution is over. I need to bait these enemies away from the throne by any means necessary. I do at the very least stay out of range with Lithis and Orson, as they are protecting me. The plan worked, and the armor stopped chasing Orson and Lithis and instead go after Linoan and Sophia. And surprisingly, they both survive. Veld also kills a couple of Berserkers. Then we get the ultimate classic matchup between Zed and Veld. And this time, for the first time in the history of playing this game, Zed loses this matchup. Just goes to show without Forsetti, he's actually not very good. And now, here we are. All we have to do is what we've been doing from the very beginning of this run. But this time, it's with the final boss himself. I just need to manipulate Veld's AI to move out of the way so we can sneak past him. I move Lithis here, and leave Orson where he is and use our very last vulnerary use. Enemy phase plays out with Veld killing that Berserker. Linoan also dies here, as well as Sophia along with her. And then, this happens.
Perfect. Now I can sneak past him. Excellent. Alright, Veld, do your thing, whatever. You can take some damage, not a big deal, whatever. Alright, I think I win. Oh, no! No! Can I still win with this and What? That was an 87%! What just happened?
From here, we have our opening. I drop Leaf with Lithis blocking Veld's path, and rescue Leaf with Orson. Next enemy phase, Veld gets bored of me, I guess, and goes back to killing his own troops. Next turn, I drop Leaf on the throne. Now, my only concern is that Veld can still use Stone on Leaf, and if he does, I lose. And believe it or not, Veld does use Stone next turn. But he uses it on Muss for some reason. Unfortunately, Muss procs Great Shield, which is unfortunate because Muss being turned to stone would have been really funny. Candace hurries to stop us, but unfortunately, she's far too late. I seize the final throne, finally putting an end to this no weapons journey. And here are all my turn counts for all the chapters. As you can see, this was definitely an LTC. Look at how low these turn counts are. Beautiful. But in all seriousness, let's go over some final results and stats for this run. So throughout this run, I used 9 checkpoints and I abused the RNG 1.25 times. The checkpoint count is a bit higher than I would want, but this run is possible without checkpoints. Some of the checkpoints I took was me just being lazy, admittedly, but some of them were relatively reasonable to save time. And as I really went out of my way to prove, this run is also possible to beat without RNG abuse at all. Here are the chapters I played in the route I took. Green represents possible, and red represents impossible. So in the route I took, 23 over 28 chapters are possible to beat without weapons, so 82.14% of the game is possible to beat without weapons. Here's a list of all the chapters in the game. So 27 out of 35 chapters, or 77.14% of the chapters in this game are possible to beat without weapons. But honestly, I didn't feel this was a fair assessment, as the only reason some chapters were impossible is because of the boss. As we proved in every chapter in the game, it is possible to get past the enemies. I'll be generous and say that the boss is like 25% of the chapter. So I decided to give 0.75 points to each red chapter. So when recalculated, I determined that for all chapters in the game, 94.28% of the game is possible, and on the route I took, a whopping over 95% of the game is possible to beat without weapons. We are so close. I can almost taste this being possible. Literally, just a few bosses need runaway AI, and then it'll be possible. So, what profound thing have I learned from doing this run? Thracia 776, what is wrong with you? The amount of maps where you can just leave, or the boss just runs away, or heck, even some where you just wait until it's over. And while there was some smart AI in this game, like in Chapter 24 in Endgame, there were just so many hilariously incompetent AI moments, like the multiple instances of Chapter 5 AI, multiple instances of random AI, the goofy Cavaliers in Chapter 7, and whatever the heck happened in Chapter 21X. For anyone who's a fan of this game, I want to make it clear, I do still love this game. And I am embellishing a bit, as this certainly was not an easy run. This may be the most complex and difficult challenge run I've ever done, and it was very fun and satisfying solving so many complex, impossible seeming puzzles all throughout the run. At the same time though, there is no other Fire Emblem game where you can do anything close to this, I don't think. I know there are Fire Emblem pacifist runs out there, but I sincerely doubt there's any Fire Emblem game out there where you can come even close to being able to beat 95% of it without weapons. So, I'm sorry Thracia fans, but this game in my eyes is now officially the goofiest game in the series. Now, in regards to this run and the video as a whole, I imagine there are things to criticize, such as the length, it is a bit long, or maybe there's a key mechanic I was missing or forgot to explain, or maybe I put too much emphasis on trying not to use save states and RNG abuse. And those are all fair criticisms. The video is admittedly flawed. Now, granted, if you still got enjoyment out of this, by all means like and subscribe, but if I'm being completely honest, I made this video mostly for myself. Which finally brings me to the catharsis. Past me. I want you to know that all your theories are not just correct, but you will discover things that are beyond your wildest dreams. But now that it's all over, all your future self is concerned about is getting a nice, well-deserved good night's sleep. And luckily, I keep a stash of sleep staffs in my closet, so... Good night, everyone.